Hello, everybody. So, this is Latency. This is a book that I wrote last year, and the sequel, Kinetics, is right over my shoulder here. It is a biopunk sci-fi thriller set in the 26th century, following 6 superpowered individuals who are being hunted. They're considered too dangerous to live by the world government and being hunted through their lives. So, I'll read chapter 1 for you today live. And then the VOD of this recording is going to go on my YouTube channel, which is the same handle, NateJKLOL, in case anybody wants to read along or hear along afterwards. So without further ado, chapter 1 of Latency. In the basement of a skyscraper, hundreds of stories high, a constant shaking and groaning accompanied the cacophony of breaking glass and falling bricks from the street above. A man and a woman had spent the night here, fearing those sounds meant their building was on the verge of collapse. Finally, the sun rose, and the sounds gave way to stillness. The death of the noise gave life to new fears, in that now the man and woman had to take action. "Are there any sort of supplies on the cycles?" the man asked. He was bleary-eyed, his face was flush, and even the simple task of standing up seemed to be a struggle. "I doubt it," the woman replied, her expression as beleaguered as his. "And you're sure there was nothing in these boxes?" she continued, glancing around the small storage room. The man shook his head. "Just lots of cleaning supplies, and we can't risk going back upstairs," he replied. "I can't even hear the big one lumbering around. That has to mean they're searching another building. We need to move now. We'll worry about the supplies after we get out of New Orleans and after it feels safe." The woman nodded and walked over to one smaller pile of boxes. She pulled them away, and the room lit up in an orange glow. The boxes had been covering a young girl, no more than 6 years old, whose skin had trails of orange light swirling across her arms, legs, and face. "We need to leave, sweetie. We're going to find our cycles in the garage, okay?" The little girl nodded. "Do you remember that woman, Allison?" she asked the girl. "Do you remember where she and her friends live?" The little girl nodded slowly, while the man's face furrowed with skepticism. "If anything happens to us, you go straight to her. Do you understand?" "She can't go to them," the man exclaimed in an elevated whisper. "They're a bunch of fanatics." "They are, but they will keep her safe," the woman responded. Tears welled up in the man's eyes as he nodded in agreement. The three of them left the storage room and walked down to the end of the hall. They swung open the heavy metal door that connected the hallway to the building's garage. On the other side of the structure, the man and woman could see that the garage's front door had been completely torn off and thrown into the street. Most of the vehicles were huge electric motorcycles, and most of them were in pieces. The man and woman found 2 that looked functional in the corner closest to the hole where the front door used to be. The woman straddled one cycle, and the man set the little girl behind her. He then walked over to the other cycle, threw his leg over, and sat down. They grabbed the handlebars at the same time, and the instant their palms made contact with the grips, the engines revved to life, and they shot out of the garage. They were on the road for about 10 seconds before a dark shadow briefly covered them and passed over. 200 feet down the street, a metallic gray humanoid figure descended out of the sky and landed with enough force to form snaking cracks around its feet. Even further away, the side of a building erupted outwards, and a far larger and bulkier figure covered in heavy gray armor barreled out to join its comrade. This new giant was flanked closely by a much smaller and skinnier bipedal robotic figure. "Fly, Sarah, now!" the woman yelled as the lead figure raised its machine gun-equipped arm and took aim at the cycles. Upon hearing the scream of her name, Sarah was no longer seated on the back of the cycle, but was instead flying upwards as if some invisible jet engine had turned on. She was terrified, but remembered what she had to do. She turned to fly away as fast as she could towards the outskirts of New Orleans, just as the machine guns opened fire on her parents. And that is chapter 1, everybody.